Well, welcome back to another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse, and this is a little late night noir again. I remember coming home and finding this movie on called Dr. Death at like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't remember much about it except there was a scene with a bunch of people in an auditorium where basically there was a dead body or something like that. And I'm really looking hard at one of the guys there, and it's none other than Moe Howard from the Three Stooges. Actually, it was his last film appearance. So, Dr. Death, Seeker of Souls, I just picked up a Blu-ray and decided to check it out. It's really fucking good. First impressions weren't, but it stars John Considine as Dr. Death, who is immortal. He's been transferring his soul into other bodies for decades. And John Considine plays this with a very theatrical flair, and he says so in an interview that he meant to do it that way, and the hopes were it was going to be a reoccurring character, which unfortunately it wasn't, even though Doc did make it till the end. It concerns this guy whose wife died, and he wants to bring her back to life using, Dr. Death's method of transferring souls. Well, he goes to this demonstration, and the guy that's asked to check out the dead young woman is none other than Moe Howard, and Dr. Death hands Moe a stethoscope, and Moe blows it off and just puts her head on her tit and was listening, and he goes, "Oh yeah, she's dead," and he does a little stick and wanders off. Thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, this husband is convinced that this guy can bring his wife back, and he pays $50,000, and what happens is the soul that the doctor is going to use is none other than his assistant, Florence Marley, the Queen of Blood herself, who he has basically tied up and has his henchman throw a knife into her chest. For whatever reason, though, the corpse rejects the soul. So that leads Dr. Death on this insane killing spree where he kills a number of girls in horrible ways and tries to get their soul to inhabit this body, and it doesn't work. And then the husband falls in love with his secretary and decides to actually have his wife buried for real. So Dr. Death decides that the secretary might be a nice match, so he catches her and decides to bleed her out. Well, the plot is thwarted, the assistant is killed, and I don't remember what the assistant's name is, but he did play one of the generals in the TV series Hogan's Heroes. He's a short, squat little guy. I think Barry Rowe might have been his name, I'm not sure. But anyway, Considine still is with us and has appeared in a ton of movies and a ton of TV series and has been all over the place and does a really neat interview on the Blu-ray. And he was also in another movie I discussed a while ago, the Art Carney vehicle, The Late Show, where he plays Lamar, Eugene Roach's henchman. So definitely worth seeking out, and definitely worth checking out John Considine's career, because he was in a ton of stuff, really some good stuff. And I got to answer a couple questions that I was asked. Someone asked me about the Terminal Bar. I guess there's a movie or a book coming out about the Terminal Bar. Honestly, I might have been in there once or twice, but that was it. There was no real attraction there. My hangout, my water hole was Club 44 on 44th Street. That's where I sort of headquartered myself there. I would roam around here and there, but Terminal Bar was next to the Terminal Hotel, who housed some of the ugliest $5 whores on the East Coast. So I know there were a lot of characters went in and out of there, a lot of pimps frequented it, but really, it was just a shot in a beer joint, which attracted some interesting people, but never really hung out there. And then somebody else brought up this movie that's coming out, The Queen of the Deuce, about Chelly Wilson. And what do I know about that? Well, what I know about Shelly Wilson isn't what a certain author, Bill Landis, wrote about her for Alpha Blue Archives, that she was the head of the Avon chain, which she wasn't. She had nothing to do with the Avon chain other than showing their films, maybe. Chelly owned a handful of theaters around the Times Square area, none that were on 42nd Street. She owned the Eros 1 and 2 on 8th Avenue, and the Eros 2 was changed to the Venus because the Eros 1 was a gay house. And to avoid confusion, she changed the second one into the Venus, and she actually maintained an apartment over the Venus. Reading Legs McNeil's book, The Other Hollywood, he mentioned that there were some high-stakes card games held up in her apartment with visiting luminaries like Jamie Gillis and Dave Friedman, stuff like that. She had a distribution arm called Variety Films, which she was the one who released Forced Entry and some of other Sean Costello stuff. Alpha Blue Archives had put out some of her homegrown stuff. A film called I Want You in 1969. It ran 63 minutes. A tale of prostitution, blackmail, narcotics, and greed. Once Upon a Body, 1970. Both films starred Linda Boyce, whoever she was. A trifecta of treacherous females rip off a homosexual street hustler and their half-baked greedy, ambitiously, a bunch of weird shit here. Another one, The Ultimate Voyeur, also starred Linda Boyce, and that was 1969. Another one, this one was 69, starred Sharon Kent. Sex Racketeer. I mean, these were all low budget. 68, another one. 69, Guess Who's Coming. You can probably see some of the stuff on the back of here. I don't know if anybody else has these, but it seemed like she produced a bunch of these low-end skin flicks. I don't think they were hardcore, but that was her whole thing. She had nothing to do with the Avon chain at all, like I said, despite the blatherings of Bill Landis. Nothing to do with it at all. Bill was a projectionist at the Venus. I think that was his exposure to her, and for whatever reason, he decided to concoct this whole bunch of bullshit. The guy behind the Avon chain was a guy named Murray Offen, a.k.a. Murray the Jew, and I talked to his nephew on Facebook, and he was the guy behind the scenes that concocted all the Avon stuff, and backed all the Avon films. I believe he was paying Carter Stevens $5,000 a film to shoot. And then when Phil Prince decided he wanted to get into it, he told Murray he could shoot the stuff for a lot on the cheap, and Phil's stuff is demented and horrible, like Taming of Rebecca and Story Purnell and stuff like that. The story perpetuated was that Phil Prince was arrested for manslaughter in front of the New Bryant Theater and was doing life in prison, which is complete bullshit, another story concocted. Phil's story is documented by the Rialto Report, if you want to know anything about that, where he basically clears the air about everything and was pretty much shocked to find out that he was doing life in prison, a.k.a. another story spread by Bill Landis. So you can check that out on the Rialto Report. Unfortunately, Phil passed away shortly after the Rialto Report. He did not want to do time for manslaughter. What happened was, it was a coke deal gone sour at a Haagen-Dazs place where he went to collect money and somebody got shot. He wound up doing time for that. Nothing to do with anything other than Phil was dealing drugs and had side hustles. So that's all I know about that. Like I said, Shelly Wilson, from what I understand, she might have been a mover and shaker, but she had nothing to do with 42nd Street in general. She had those 4 or 5 theaters. One of them, I think, might have been the Park Miller, and another one might have been the Pix, down on the lower end of 42nd Street. And that was the one that used to run some of these marathon, 10 features all at once things. So that's about all I know about her. Talking to some people that I know in the industry, she was regarded by some as a pain in the ass because she wanted to muscle in on other people's territories, which wasn't going to happen. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And definitely check out Dr. Death. It's worth a fucking look. So until then, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip side.